Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Noémie Ndiaye. I am faculty in the English department here at Chicago and founder of the Black Baroque Project. So this is the first Black Baroque Project event of 2023, and we are delighted to be back. Don't hesitate to help yourselves to coffee and cookies. There's more than enough for everybody. So a warm welcome to anyone who's joining us on Zoom. This event is recorded. The Zoom recording will be made available on the Black Baroque YouTube channel after the fact. This event is made possible by the generosity of the Division of the Humanities here at UChicago, and we are grateful to the Center for the Study of Race, Politics, and Culture for hosting us and co-sponsoring this event. I cannot thank enough Rachel Willis, brilliant PhD candidate here at UChicago, who is doing a masterful job at managing the Black Baroque Project. As a matter of fact, it is Rachel who did the research that put Harmonia's work on our radar. So this event would not be possible without her on many levels. Thank you, Rachel. Last but not least, let me thank our distinguished guests, Harmonia Rosales and Sophia McCabe, whom I will properly introduce in a minute. I will first say a few words about the Black Baroque Project. The BBP was created in 2020 and will keep running for another couple of years. We platform contemporary artists of the African diaspora who work with, against, and through Baroque aesthetics as they reckon with our own cultural moment. Last year, we hosted artists Kajal Benis and Wole Legunju. This year, we keep turning our attention to the visual arts. And as a matter of fact, we just launched our first BBP artist grant with Detroit-based artist Backpack Durden as inaugural recipient. As I've said before in discussing what it is that we do here, there is a tension or a slash at the core of the very phrase Black Baroque, because the Baroque is historically a time period that set the foundations for the white supremacist and anti-Black regimes in which we still live today, with the development of settler colonialism, color-based slavery, and the transnational invention of whiteness. In visual and decorative culture, Baroque aesthetics yielded representations of Afro-diasporic people that often underlined their beauty, but also commodified them, as pre-modern critical race studies scholars like Kim F. Hall and Peter Erickson have showed in their work on blackamoor figuration in early miniature jewels and aristocratic portraits. Actually, it is perhaps in visual culture that the early modern literal and symbolical commodification of a Black body that was becoming racialized is most visible in archives today. And yet, there is simply no denying that its aesthetic codes, based on beautiful irregularity and characterized by complexity, surprise, dizzying folds, metamorphosis, and illusions, perpetual movement, self-referentiality, and a lavish profusion of carefully contrived ornaments in a number of artistic media have appealed to and been reclaimed by artists of the African diaspora. Moreover, as we strive to reckon with this highly generative tension at the core of Black Baroque, we are hailed by French, Caribbean, and philosopher Edouard Glissant, a very influential figure in Black studies, who thought about the Baroque in his masterful Poetics of Relation as an epistemology, or a way of knowing, and by extension, a way of existing in the world that is radically open. Here I'm going to cite him briefly. Baroque art was a reaction against the rationalist pretense of penetrating the mysteries of the known with one uniform and conclusive move. A Baroque shudder, that is, a rerouting, set out to convey that all knowledge is to come, and that this is what makes it of value. Unquote. As a result, Glissant sees the Baroque as an epistemology that is not located historically as a one-time event in the age of Counter-Reformation age, but as a dialectical process that recurs historically in every culture, butting heads over and over again with the certainties of our many classicisms. This interpretation of Baroque culture and aesthetics might help us today understand in what sense the Baroque constitutes a resource for contemporary artists of the diaspora. On the Black Baroque Project, we want to hear from artists who reckon with the complexity of what Black/Baroque means, and we curate conversations between such artists and the scholars who are best positioned to help illuminate those artists' worlds for us. The scholar in question today is Sophia McCabe. Sophia McCabe is an independent curator and scholar. She received her PhD in History of Art and Architecture from the University of California, Santa Barbara. She has published on 16th and 17th century art and networks, as well as contemporary art. Her research has been supported by the German-American Fulbright Commission, the Gladys Delmas-Kriebel Foundation, and the J. Paul Getty Trust, among others. She was supporting curator of the exhibition Harmonia Rosales Entwined at the Art, Design, and Architecture Museum at UC Santa Barbara, where she served as academic coordinator and contributor to the Memphis Brooks Museum of Art's Harmonia Rosales Master Narrative exhibition catalog. Given her deep knowledge of and closest to Harmonia's work, we could not have dreamt of a better interlocutor than Dr. McCabe for this conversation. Harmonia Rosales is influenced by her multicultural Afro-Cuban background. She is primarily concerned artistically with Black female empowerment through a diasporic lens. Her work seamlessly entwines the oral narratives and deities of West African Yorùbá religion, Greco-Roman mythology, and Christianity with the artistic techniques of the Renaissance masters. For Rosales, reimagining hegemonic narratives preserves the memory of her ancestral lineage and functions to champion resilience and question Eurocentric notions of beauty. While her subjects serve as conduits for the internal struggles of a disempowered society, Rosales encourages her onlookers to possess more sympathy, more empathy, and more empowerment. Her recent, current, and upcoming solo exhibitions include Harmonia Rosales Master Narrative, that was at Spelman Museum in Atlanta and came with its own catalog, the one to which Sophia contributed. The exhibition also was on display at the Memphis Brooks Museum of Art in Memphis. We also note her solo show Garden of Eve in 2022 in LA at the UTA Artist Space, Harmonia Rosales Entwined at the UCSB and ADNA Museum in Santa Barbara the same year, 2018 New World Consciousness in Hampton, New York, and 2017 BITCH in LA. Her work can be admired in the permanent collections of the UCSB ADNA Museum, the Memphis Brooks Museum of Art, the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History, Mount Holyoke College Art Museum, and Rhode Island School of Design. You might also have spotted her gorgeous work on the cover of rapper Nas' 2020 album, King's Disease, among other album covers, book covers, and documentary films. We are honored to host Harmonia today. I will now yield the floor to Harmonia and Sophia, who will converse for about 45 minutes, after which we will open the floor to questions. They will answer questions for about 30 minutes. Folks on Zoom, don't hesitate to drop your questions in the Q&A box, and they shall be answered. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Noemi Ndiaye, for inviting me to be part of the Black Baroque Project event. I was going to do a little 10-minute presentation first to kind of get us into conversation. And I want to thank you also to Rachel Willis for coordinating everything here. I'm delighted and honored to be here speaking about Chicago-born contemporary artist Harmonia Rosales and her paintings that engage with, reimagine, and subvert Baroque art for new audiences. Stories matter. Visualizing one's culture and journey matters. Harmonia Rosales' beautiful and powerful paintings with stories of West African gods and goddesses called orishas not only represent the African diaspora, but also reveal the histories connecting Black communities around the world. Her solo exhibition, Harmonia Rosales Master Narrative, currently at the Memphis Brooks Museum of Art, will travel to Spelman College in August. It expands upon her first solo museum exhibition, Harmonia Rosales Entwined, at the Art, Design, and Architecture Museum in 2022. I want to share this quote. To quote one attendee at Santa Barbara's exhibition programming, seeing the Pan-African culture depicted in this style of painting This art is astonishing. Subconsciously, it communicates that we as a Black community have a place in that sophisticated world, or that we are equally as important. Harmonia Rosales visualizes the stories of the Orishas and the survival of the Yoruba religion, entwining such tales with Greco-Roman mythology, Christianity, and early modern European art. Through syncretism or merging with Christianity to form Lukumi, as the religion became known in Cuba and called Santeria in other areas, the Yoruba religion persevered. Orishas became syncretized with Christian saints and figures. For example, we have here the Orisha of the ocean and mother to all, Yamaya, associated with the Virgin Mary or the Lady of Regula, as she is known in Cuba. In publicly praying to the Lady of Regula, the Lukumi covertly worshipped Yamaya. My brief introduction to Rosales' works seeks to answer the overall question of why. Why does Rosales choose to reimagine famous Renaissance and Baroque paintings, and how do her paintings help create a culture of belonging? I suggest several reasons. Using familiar motifs to tell different stories engages new audiences. It raises questions about who has been left out of history, whose histories and whose values are portrayed in early European art. It shines a light on the atrocities of colonial history and the transatlantic slave trade. For example, Rosales' Migration of the Gods, modeled after Michelangelo's fresco, The Deluge in the Sistine Chapel, addresses the horrors of the Middle Passage and how the Orishas and the Yoruba religion were carried on the backs and in the arms of African ancestors to the Americas. Elmina Fortress, one of the primary posts of the transatlantic slave trade in present-day Ghana, looms in the background. Reimagining this art challenges Eurocentric ideals of power and beauty. In representing the stories of the Orishas, the paintings speak to Black empowerment and Black female empowerment. And finally, the reimagination of early European art with powerful Black and brown protagonists works to decolonize art and art history by calling attention to the constructions of the Western canons of art and how they serve to keep white patriarchal supremacy and systems in place. Now, to be clear, Rosales loves Renaissance and Baroque paintings. Her new visuality engages with these artistic models, but with a critical lens. Her Birth of Oshun presents the Orisha of love and desire as a stunning ebony-toned woman floating on a seashell towards the viewer. Using Botticelli's 15th century Birth of Venus as a model, Rosales subverts one of the most famous and recognizable Renaissance paintings worldwide to center Black beauty and Black female empowerment. Covered in golden markings suggestive of the skin condition vitiligo and with short cropped hair, Oshun is beauty. She supplants her Greek counterpart, depicted with creamy skin and long flowing hair, and challenges impossible beauty standards codified in Renaissance paintings. Rosales has shared, quote, "None of the women in my paintings have hair. They're always all bald-headed, natural, bald-headed, and that's because that hair doesn't determine their beauty." Moving from the 15th and 16th centuries, what is referred to as the Renaissance period, to the 17th century, when the Baroque style emerged, I want to begin by outlining some of the purposes and characteristics of this art. I put Baroque in quotation marks because the art wasn't labeled as such in the period. With its heightened naturalism and drama, Baroque art during its origins of the 17th century served to increase the number of the Catholic faithful after the start of the Protestant Reformation. This art was used as a tool to delight, instruct, and move or inspire the 17th century believer to religious spirituality. It's dynamic, dramatic, and at times decorative and ornamental, and appeals to one's emotions. I suggest Rosales' King Shango also delights, instructs, and inspires one to understand the spirituality and underpinning the work. This painting is about the death and transcendence of Shango, the Orisha of lightning and thunder. Shango decided to be a king amongst the humans. His reign as the fourth Alephin of the Oya Empire was one of tyrannical rule. A leader with supernatural powers, his cruelty and jealousy caused people to turn on him. Betrayed by one of his generals, the king and his family were forced into exile. Different versions of the myth exist, with Shango committing suicide or murdered by his own general. With his powers, Shango raised the kingdom in retribution, setting the entire empire ablaze. For the initiated, the burning hazy landscape calls to mind the myth's sensorial effects of heat, mixed with the acrid smell and taste of smoke and ash. The painting focuses on the moments after Shango's death, portraying the king's lifeless mortal body and simultaneously his transcendence back into an Orisha. Modeled after Caravaggio's entombment, Shango's gaunt body echoes that of Christ, with the Orishas Obatala and Oshosi supporting him. Oshun, Oba, and Oya take the place of the Madonna, Mary Magdalene, and the third woman. Rounding out the grieving Orishas are Yamaya and Ogun. Like Caravaggio's group, Rosales' figures are foreshortened, which makes them look as if they are in our space, thus encouraging a greater connection to them. Instead of Caravaggio's stark simplicity and dramatic lighting, however, Rosales makes use of an extensive landscape background to visualize the story. The Iroko tree, wild date palm, and tropical forest setting locate the narrative specifically in Africa. We are invited to enter the painting through the tree trunk on the left that extends beyond the picture plane. By showing us the king's feet, the artist emphasizes Shango's physical death. His human form is no longer, but his power as an Orisha lives on within his followers, the initiates of Lukumi. Dirt covered feet was a motif popularized by Caravaggio that helped humanize holy figures. In another painting, the upward energy and dynamic composition of Rosales' Ascension of a Woman challenges Baroque artistic models and Christian theology. 5 ethereal, ebony-toned female figures rise high above the earth. The group represents Eve and speaks to the idea of all of us ascending or transcending, not just a single chosen one. Rosales' painting, I suggest, invokes the energy and figural motifs of Apollo and Daphne, a marble sculpture by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, one of the most famous sculptors and architects in 17th century Rome. The story is about the Greek god Apollo, who, shot by the arrow of Eros, falls in love with the nymph Daphne and pursues her. She flees, crying out to her father, the river god, for help. And to save her, he transformed Daphne into a laurel tree. Bernini captured the moment of transformation in which her body is in the middle of changing into bark, branches, and leaves. Rosales' Ascension subverts the Greek myth and Bernini's sculpture through its celebration of women free and high above the earth instead of trapped and rooted literally as a tree. In Ambushed, Rosales entwines the motifs of Baroque art and Greek mythology with historical events to create an allegorical painting of Africa under attack. The dramatic work was inspired by the myth of Hercules and Antaeus. In order to defeat Antaeus, who drew his power from the earth, Hercules lifted the giant off the ground, squeezing him to death. In Rosales' painting, Yamaya represents Mother Africa in the role of Antaeus. She is being ambushed and lifted from her source of strength, her land, her culture, by the 7 European and American powers whose coordinated and planned pillaging of the continent and its resources during the 19th and 20th centuries set the world stage for racial capitalism. The struggling figure of Yamaya echoes John Bologna's late 16th century sculpture of the abduction of a Sabine woman in Florence. Time doesn't permit me to bring into discussion patronage, but I want to mention that John Bologna, Bernini, Caravaggio, and other artists with whom Rosales engages in dialogue worked for the papacy and princely courts, including the Medici, one of the most powerful merchant banking families in Europe from the 15th to the 17th centuries, and creditors to the popes. That Rosales is attuned to this patronage and how her paintings may be perceived, the value imbued upon them through invoking these connections, is surely not lost on the artist or the viewer. Rosales' Birth of Eve, a reimagination of Peter Paul Rubens and Jan Bruegel the Elder's 17th century painting, portrays the cycle of a woman's life. Mary and Eve are in the center as being one and the same. I want to draw particular attention to Rosales' incredible skills of painting realistic figures, as well as flora and fauna, fabrics and jewelry. Such high-level work generally required 2 or more specialists for one joint painting, as we see with Rubens's figures and Bruegel's floral elements. In Rosales' singular hands, playful cherubs work to create the flower garland with different varietals and fruits. Winged insects seek the sweetness of the florals, while the snake of knowledge with its shiny patterned scales appears on the left. At the top of the painting, we see strands of lustrous pearls in pink and mauve tones, made more dazzling and realistic by the illusion of light reflecting off them. The motif of florals continues, but the blooms have become grander, exploding from the darkness. In Jaguar meets Shango, the florals support the pataky of how Jaguar lost her innocence when Shango came upon her in the garden. I compare this work to the still life painting by Dutch 17th century artist Rachel Ruysch, who had brought together various blooms generally not flowering at the same time. Rosales uses the motifs of Dutch 17th century still life, but reconceptualizes the idealized bouquet in her work. The abundance of roses, palms, peonies, insects, and other creatures gather around the central figure of Eve to form the Garden of Eden, the artist's inversion of the Garden of Eden in Beyond the Peonies. Rosales' close study of nature and artistic skills transform paint into stilled emotion. Hummingbird hovers in the air, its green and blue feathers shimmering in the light. And in case you didn't notice the serpent, which I've missed previously, its head peeks out from below Eve's hand, the light reflecting off its textured scales. Finally, when I first saw Oba and her ear, I was floored. While the composition looks similar to 16th century paintings of Salome with the head of St. John the Baptist, as shown in Lucas Cranach's panel, the narrative of self-mutilation for love was completely different. Oba's direct gaze, coupled with the velvety richness of her skin, achieved with thin layers of oil paint and undertones of blues and coppers, captures the viewer's attention. Never mind the blood-soaked ear, blade, and bandage. Rosales' particular attention to the undertones of darker skin emerged from her criticality of early European paintings. She has said, the one issue that I have with most of the work was that the darker skin tones are flat. And when I see someone that is of dark skin tone in person, they glow. I can see all the colors every time, and it's beautiful. Rosales' paintings invite audiences to enjoy the beauty and skill of her work and see themselves in the power of art while connecting with their empowering themes. They are also personal journeys and reflections of one's experiences. The portrayals of heroic figures, as well as those undergoing grief and sorrow, provides a sense of recognition, acknowledgement, and connection. That Black protagonists replace white figures calls attention to whose histories are taught in Western institutions and whose histories have been left out. These paintings provide new stories of belonging and a way for everyone to see themselves in history. In subverting 16th and 17th century art, Rosales invites audiences to reconsider ideas of beauty, empowerment, the atrocities of our colonial past, and its legacies that we continue to grapple with today. And now, several here and have a little conversation, but I might need some help clicking through, okay? So thank you, Harmonia. I mean, we've worked together for a couple of years now, and it's been such a pleasure for me. I wonder, this is somewhat of a homecoming for you.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about growing up in Chicago and how Chicago helped introduce you to the art of the Renaissance and how you even started painting and such.
Where to start?
Yeah, where to start?
Well, my mom, she was a children's book author, illustrator. So I grew up loving art or appreciating it. And it was more emphasized when she took me to the Art Institute here. That was like my playground. It had all the beautiful, these priceless paintings that were, wow, it was intricately detailed and beautiful. And although I didn't look at the paintings as the story was supposed to be told, I made up my own stories. And I just fell in love with it. It was like big pages of a children's book to me, at that age, about, 4 or 5. And that was through my mother's side, but it was more influenced, I would say, consistently on my grandmother's side. My father's side, my grandmother. My grandmother, I was always going over to her place. She would always babysit me. We had 2 brownstones across the street from each other. So whenever my mom was on deadlines, I'd cross the street and I'll visit my grandmother, and she always, I would say, influenced and had these, not so much telling you the stories, but had the influence of the queen. But on her walls, she appreciated art as well. She had so many pieces of art, but in particular, there was 3 that stuck out that I'm actually, when I was asked or invited to speak, I really was thinking, like, these 3 paintings in particular really explained who my grandmother was, outside of being just what I saw at the time, a housewife. Always waking up, making sure the bed was made, taking care of my grandfather, always making all the meals. This is why I love going over there. I was always fed. But on these walls, I was above her plastic covered couch. Remember that? It was 3 paintings. So there was one is Las Meninas, and I loved this painting because I thought these were like little princesses that I wanted to be. And I loved the background specifically because it looked like I can walk up those stairs and out that door. And I was wondering, how do the gardens look like? And I would always stare at this. Then there was also, we can, there was also this one, which I was fascinated with because it was just such a beautiful image. And it stuck out because, of course, she's a nude, I'm a child. And so I was just like, this is like, but this was also on display above her couch. Now, above her kitchen was young woman with peonies. And I'm going to tell you how these all connect. And I'll start from here. Oh, I'll start from, again, Las Meninas. And this is my own analysis. I'm learning more about my grandmother after her death, as I'm growing as an adult. I keep her essence alive in a lot of my artworks, and I'm discovering who she is. Looking at this painting, which I always was fascinated because I wanted to be like a little princess. I wonder why she had certain paintings up. In this particular one, I saw it as princesses, but if you look in that mirror in the back, it's an artist, right? This is like the family here. It's an artist painting the royal couple here. And so it's almost as if she saw herself as being painted, right? She was encompassing this person. And I find what's good about analyzing what's beyond the painting and what the artist wants to portray, you can learn like a lot and about a person, especially my grandmother who loved this painting. And I could see why she loved this painting. So it showed me that she saw herself in a grander scale than what she was. And the second painting emphasized that. This is a woman who is confident, and she's confident in her skin. My grandmother always had her nails done. And the reason why she had her nails done is she used to work at a factory, so she couldn't have her nails done. It was, I think, bottle caps. So she couldn't. So when they, and this was her first job in, when she moved from Cuba, to join my grandfather, and they made a life from the ground up. And her first job in Chicago was working at this factory. And then when when my grandfather made enough and she stopped working, she was like, oh, okay, my hair is gonna be done. She had her nails done, and the nails are the sign of I'm not doing any more manual kind of like, work. And so she was always well dressed all the time and put together until her final years when she wasn't able to get dressed. But I see that she loved this because this woman was confident in herself and her body. And you could tell by the way she's looking at the viewer directly. And actually, I was reading on this, and this is amazing too, that this was so controversial at the time. But the last one, this was above her kitchen. And I saw her in this. This is my grandmother right here. She wore her scarves off to keep her hair in place all the time while she cooks. And you see this woman selling flowers, and it's not like she's working. She's doing what she has to do in order to survive. You could tell that in her face. She's a hard worker. And I think this was a reminder of where my grandmother started. She grew up in the hills of Cuba, so it was very like no running water, nothing. So it kind of reminded her where she came from, where she is now, and being very appreciative of life. So seeing this, growing up with these images, my grandmother was empowering. She was such a role model that I wish I had this mindset in order to talk to her more now. But she really influenced me and taught me to follow your destiny, and taught me about how we have a history that may not be depicted in these paintings, but that's, I guess, what kind of was an influence subconsciously. I wanted her to see herself in paintings, not as working, but also in paintings where she is empowered, she is holy, she is everything.
That's wonderful. I can see like these, similar to you, like these different identities of oneself,
Yes.
coming out.
Yeah.
And then with your work, you're bringing that all together too. And I think you mentioned that, so did you grow up in the Lukumi religion, or is it your grandmother introduced you to it?
I would say she introduced me, but it was always around. It wasn't like no religion was forced.
Okay.
It was always there, ever present. The way she taught about, or my family, because my mother adopted a culture when she met my father at 18. So it was just combined that following your destiny, which is the ultimate main purpose of the religion, following your intuition, but also being around the Bovedas, being around the vases with water, being around all the lekis, which are like the beads and the different colors of the orishas representing them, and her doing little stuff. She would sew a lot by hand, like little nightgowns and stuff, but she sewed this one thing that I still have. It was a skirt, and it had all the colors. It was a rainbow skirt, but I thought it was a rainbow skirt, but it was actually representing all the colors of the orishas. Yeah. And then my father, as I got older and was more interested, since he was initiated, he would tell me a few stories that he knew, and this is history.
Well, I mean, talk about that a little bit, because that's a lot of the subject matter that you paint are these stories, right? The patakees. So what you kind of mentioned a little bit of what prompted you to start painting that, but there was, I think, was there other things?
Yeah. So growing up with something consistently around you, you take it for granted. So I was trying to find myself. I was lost in society. You should look like this. You should be this. You should, so I wasn't focused. But I became focused later in life. So when I had my children. And so you had all these seeds being planted in my head, but they weren't growing. So it wasn't until when I had these children in front of me, it was like having these innocent eyes. It was almost like being reborn again. So me wanting, well, my oldest, when she was born, I wanted her to appreciate art as much as I did. And I'm thinking, this is a little mini me. I'm gonna take her to the museums and she's gonna love it just as much as I do. And you know, she looked at it and she was like, you know, she was like bored. And I was like, what are you bored? It's like fascinating. You don't like, you draw all the time. Like, you don't love this. And she just didn't see herself in these at all. Like, and so I was like, well, how can I get her interested? And there wasn't any work of art that I saw that represented, there was a lot of Greek mythology, beautiful paintings, but nothing that represented the African gods. And I was like, well, and this is where it all started to just tie in. I was like, well, that there are gods and goddesses just like Venus, right? But they look just like you. And I began painting to show her what was missing. And it happened in doing so, it happened that there was a thirst for this in people of color everywhere.
So definitely your birth of Oshun 2017 was probably like an explosion onto that, you know, onto the surface there. I'm curious, you selectively chose European models. Why European models instead of other models, for example?
Models as in
Artistic models, sorry.
like the whole composition wise and using
More like the Renaissance and Baroque type paintings. Like why specifically those?
well, besides that they're beautiful.
Besides their beauty.
But so Baroque art is very exaggerated. It's animated. It's as much animated as possible being in that painting. And it evokes emotion. And that is what I want viewers to feel. But more importantly, it ties in, or it's representing inclusion. I'm trying to include our stories. When I say our, people from the African diaspora, our individual unique stories into this master narrative that we have currently. And a lot of these orishas are synchronized or had to be synchronized with Catholic saints in order to survive. We were forced to practice and believe in a religion that was completely foreign to us, and we tried to find ties so we can hold on to our identity. And so my work is all about unmasking these, and the best way to really mainstream and make and normalize and make these gods familiar when we had Greek mythology for so long being taught in schools is I had to figure out a way where it can speed up the process. People who are not of, African diaspora can understand this and appreciate it and love it, just like I love Greek mythology. And so I reimagine these images we know in order to familiarize these gods. So the birth of Oshun, I was like, well, birth of Venus is perfect. This is perfect. I'll just replace the gods that are similar to the ones there. And people can say, well, okay, I know that this is Venus. The one in the center is Venus, but so this is a whole different, her name's Oshun, and they can quickly Google and know the similarities.
What? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I thought I had it.
No problem.
Let's go back.
Let's just skip that. Okay, that's fine. We'll just keep it. We'll just keep it then.
And I try to paint the gods similar in every painting. Painting. Besides, I love switching up the body types, just so I can represent try to represent everyone.
Yeah, I love that. I wanted to, because I think you mentioned that you've not had actual formal art training. So you've taught yourself, self-taught. Tell us a little bit about that, because, when you're representing everyone, all body types, all colors, doing it in such amazing, like incredible skill, using, in fact, Renaissance techniques. Could you talk a little bit about how you learned and what you're doing and what prompted you to like kind of do that?
Oh, I do not, I mean, in me particularly, I can't sit in a classroom and be told how to do, how to paint or what not to do. My classroom is my studio. I learn through my mistakes. And doing so, I just learn new techniques. And so I'm incorporating where, as if I believe it is that if I went to class and I was taught by someone, I wouldn't have the freedom or want to experiment with iron oxide and such. And a lot of the techniques now, a lot of things are not taught really, a lot of the old techniques. And I believe because we're not as patient, and the art I want to create, I want to last, I want these paintings to last for hundreds of years. And it does take patience. And I wish there was more old master techniques being taught in classrooms. So I'm subject to independent study and trying to learn as much as possible from these old masters through their diaries, like Leonardo and such.
I mean, you are, your artistic process actually includes a lot of research, like deeply researched. And so you're kind of like a pictor doctus, as they call it, where it's like, you're a scholarly painter, you're a scholarly artist. So it's quite incredible. I wanted to, if you don't mind, I'm just going to,
Please go
if
ahead.
that's okay. Just kind of walk us through just a tiny little bit. Like for example, in creating your luminous skin, the use, when you say patience, right? It's this oil glazing and like, yeah, I didn't realize you were doing this until you told me. So if you could share with the audience, this process that you've learned.
Well, what I found what was beautiful in these old master images and paintings were the luminous skin. You could see the veins, there were colors in it. It was just like, you could see the blushing techniques in the cheeks. It was absolutely beautiful. And so darker skin is colors. It represents all colors. You know how when you're a kid and you mix the paints, you mix all the paints kind of, you got different kind of brown, maybe it's more red, maybe it's, I see color. And looking at, we have either an undertone of red, an undertone of yellow, an undertone of blue, if the sun hits it right. And there's so many colors and it bounces off in like literally in different parts of your face. And you can have a combination of them, actually. And so by recognizing this and looking at this and mimicking it in the work, the skin glows. It's going to glow instead of becoming flat. We're not just brown. We're not just, one color or two colors. We're all the colors.
Right.
And that's what I try to depict. And this in the thin oil glazes.
Right. The patience with the thin oil glazing.
Yeah, it's all about
just
drawing
all
on
about
it. I try to, I'm not a patient person, so sometimes I'm like, get the fan on and I'll try to like speed up the process, but it doesn't work. I have to let it dry each and every layer. There's like 10 layers it could be.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, because we were looking at gold, I wanted to actually ask you a little bit about some of your symbolism that you have, and also we'll continue talking about the techniques, but you use a lot of gold in your paintings.
Yes.
Could you tell us why?
First of all, it's beautiful.
Yes.
Besides the beauty. Yeah, it's beautiful. But in particular, it's beautiful against darker skin tone. But symbology wise, I like to say that we are worth more than gold, because in particular, and I like to use this story because it could explain broadly this concept of why I use gold, is the Royal African Company.
Mhm.
So the story there is, yeah, which always have coins and gold coins and everything. So the Royal African Company, a large manufacturer, created coins, and this is what they did. However, once the slave trade got going, they realized selling enslaved people was more profitable. And in essence, we are more profitable than gold, because the whole entire slave trade was money. And so this is why I use a lot of gold.
So it's basically taking back the gold.
Taking back, reclaiming.
Reclaiming.
Yeah, that's what all my paintings are about, reclaiming our history and holding on to that, and thus, holding on to our identity.
The scratching that Harmonia does with gold, and so this was scratched, the gold background, scratch or sgraffito, meaning to scratch in Italian, to make the little bowl, the little circular illustrations there. But she does the same with oil or tempera on gold. So this is the reason why it's so brilliant. And I did not realize this. I thought, well, this red dress is amazingly red and brilliant and shiny and wide. And I didn't realize until later when you said, no, it's gold underneath. And I thought, okay, there's something going on here. So this idea of scratching, and you're learning how to do that. And we've seen it in other, fabrics or other paintings that you have with fabrics, to get that gold layer.
But also there's some colors I use that I actually do by, that I create by hand with the pigments. And that creates the luminous color, because you can get color straight from the tube, or you can mix color, and sometimes it just kind of lays flat. It's not luminous. And you had all the old masters making their own paint. So the egg tempera I create, actually I mix with my own pigments. So I'll take fresh egg yolk and I'll mix the pigments, and I'll put the thin layers over the gold, and it just illuminates it. There's actually, I forgot what the bugs are called. I actually buy it from Etsy, the ground bugs.
Cochineal?
Yes.
Okay.
And I use that with oil and to try to create that red. So you'll see the red. And another thing I realized by learning from my mistakes, and you can see with the portrait of Eve, is oils. So thin layer of oils onto the gold shines through. And so it's still illuminating, but creates shadows. So I create shadows and so forth. And yeah, again, just this is my first time actually doing that. I was like, let me try it out.
And one of the most amazing things I think is that you don't have really a practice canvas.
Oh no,
it is the final canvas, so the final panel. It's the final work of art that Harmonia works on. She doesn't really have a sketchbook, and so
yeah, all my paintings you'll see all the mistakes on there, and I love it because that's what art is about. It's about working with your mistakes and finding new ways of painting. A lot of my mistakes have turned into something that I use all the time. It's my own personal techniques. And the reason also why I don't sketch or use another canvas to test it, is I'm all about how the energy and the feel of producing a work of art for the first time. Because then if I create a sketch of it or a smaller version to create a larger version, it's not going to have the same, I'm not going to feel the excitement of developing this work. So it's all in that little sketch. Usually sketches, I believe, are better than the painting. So I want all that energy, all that love for that image to be on a big canvas. So I know it's a risk, but it's I could see the image in my head. So, and I trust myself. And so, yeah, it comes out on the canvas.
Amazing. Let's go through a little bit. This is the iron oxide. I mean, we've seen it in several different paintings, but the iron oxide technique that Harmonia has experimented with and uses in a lot of her paintings to represent either Africa or just Earth in general, right?
The red soil.
The red soil.
Yeah.
So I bring this up because I've noticed that you started bringing in a little trompe l'oeil where you've got this optical illusion of different elements. So this bee almost looks real because of the shadows and such that are created. Tell me a little bit about your kind of turning to this, because this was, you know, very recently.
I incorporate it whenever I feel I'm consistently growing as an artist, and that's all an artist can do is consistently learn and grow. And in this particular one, it was more of an abstract. So I wanted the viewer to be a part of this painting. And by doing so, I created a bee as life size and like swinging around. I wanted a 3D feel, and this is exactly why I created the shadows as well. But since this particular painting is about Ori, this is the god that's in your head that you listen to, the ultimate one that can form your life and shape it to your desire. It's not really Orisha that is a physical being. So here I just wanted kind of like a different dimension.
I think this, you know, speaks again to the kind of Baroque aesthetics,
Yeah.
whereby this kind of observation of the world, the natural world, and trying to kind of capture that natural world in painting or collecting it. So it's this, I think you're, in terms of bringing it into your paintings, it's again this kind of reclaiming, you know, nature, reclaiming it for, I guess, oneself and such. So,
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, what else do I have? I think it was all about. Can we talk about the strangler fig a little bit? This is something that I think it's a symbol of manipulation, as I understand. But is this something that you had thought of? Like, this is your concept, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, when I thought of reimagining different images, what makes it different from just copying is changing the story and also changing the underlying meaning. Everything was going to be changed. So I like to think when we have a big issue, considering racism and such, I could paint a Band-Aid, which is create contemporary works that focus directly on that, on dividing us further with that color line. Or I can really think about the root of the issue and then empower us there. So our history didn't start when enslavement happened, it was before then. And so what is the essence of the whole slave trade? Was manipulation, power, and money. And how can I depict that without painting a white person? You know, I didn't want to paint like another enslaved person or us dividing us further. So I depicted this power, this manipulation, that as something that can infiltrate the garden of Eden, which is just our mentality, our clear, natural mind that we are everything. We are up here. Now we don't see ourselves as being still enslaved. So here is a strangler fig, which the strangler fig works like this. If you guys do not know, it needs a host in order to grow. So you have the natural tree and its environment, and a bird eats from its fig, and it flies to a tree, poops on it, and poops the seeds out, and the strangler fig grows from that branch downward, and it slowly wraps itself around the tree, and the vines begin to intertwine and merge together. And it grows all the way down, slowly tightening its grip on that tree. And then it digs its roots into the ground and steals the tree's nutrients. And then once the tree has died, it sprouts this beautiful, sweet fruit for the next bird to eat. And so that, I believe, was like, this says everything. This is manipulation, how it sinks into your mind and just changes everything. If we think of our bodies as a natural tree in our environment, we're beautiful, we have this crown of beautiful leaves, and the manipulation comes in and sets in and starts strangling us. We lose our identity. We become something completely different, what manipulation wants us to be. And then what happens? We have children. Whatever we do from just being a human being living on Earth, we spread that same manipulated, mentality onto the next generation. And so here is, I wanted to really emphasize the strangler fig here. And just, warning us that to really follow your inner tuition and always be aware of that string. Don't let that strangler fig get a hold of you, because it needs a host in order to survive.
Yeah, I know that you've used strangler fig, in the Jaguar Shango painting. There was a fig that she is holding. So, but yeah, whenever I see figs, I'm like, okay, there's something going on here that we need to be aware of. But could you tell me a little bit about the snake? I think there was something, because these are two paintings. Number one, just to let you know, these are two panels, but side by side, we see that the snake is one.
Yeah, so
Here about that.
Here it's I thought about when I created this, it was a diptych, and I could paint the snake with just one head, but there is, because I like to use symbology of the cycle of life, and the obelisk, I'm sorry, the snake biting its tail, I forgot what the thank you. Yes, and a lot of that. So the two-headed snake symbolizes for me grappling with being indecisive. Because we choose to go one way, we choose to go left, or we choose to go the path that we are destined to. And it's all about choices. And so that's what the snake here. The snake always is never negative in my paintings. It's just life. It's the obstacles that a human or we have to go through in order to get to our destiny. And sometimes we can get lost on the way. But for me, we believe that you can always find your way back, no matter what age you are, no matter where you are in life. There's always a way back. But you need these obstacles in order to be stronger, so you can reach it.
So you need the obstacles.
You need
right?
it. Yes.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, let's just see this now, a bit about your use of clothing. What is the driving force behind your use of clothing, as well as obviously they're beautiful because you have this quality of like silks and pearls and everything. But what is the kind of driving force behind it?
I like to use a lot of the Renaissance symbolism. I like pearls as, innocence. And innocence meaning not knowing what's going on or what's ultimately happening. And a lot of I would say the textiles of Renaissance with the gods, because they are being unmasked, they still have residues of like, okay, Lukumi in Cuba, it's a colonized version of the Yoruba religion. So it's altered, but we don't know really what the original stories are because it's all oral. Nothing has been written down. So it differentiates from priestess to priestess, or priest to priest. But gods in general are made to change as, being contemporized all the time, to fit the times. But here, so that's why I use the Renaissance fabrics on these goddesses and gods, or these deities. Here in particular is I wanted to show when one is displaced and tries to acquire or being forced to fit in and into society's expectations, and how that looks. It doesn't quite fit. Like I wanted this to look more like these. It doesn't fit them. It's a mix and match. It's not their identity. Now it's almost like a costume that they have to wear. This think of like a Halloween costume or something where they have to be civilized, just
this kind of enforced civilization.
exactly, where everything that you grew up with is seen as bad and wrong, and so you're supposed to act this way, and it's the opposite, and you do lose yourself. So they're lost, they're becoming lost. Things are being taken away.
Right. Okay. So here we are. Okay. I wanted to ask a little bit about this. This is, in the current exhibition that you have right now. And it's such a large sculptural work. The first question is this your first sculpture? And then secondly, tell us a little bit more about this, because it's such a massive undertaking. This is it's basically it's a wooden sculpture representing a slave ship. So it's the undercarriage of a slave ship, the hull of a slave ship. And what has happened is Harmonia has had her images, her paintings printed on fabric, archival fabric, and then attached to the ship.
And regal leaf.
And gold leaf.
Regal leaf. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this work. And
So I follow my intuition. That's my driving force. And I know some people are like, oh, I gotta plan out things. And it's kind of planned, and I know the kind of direction, but I let everything fall in place. And this actually, to compile this full story, took 5 years. I couldn't do it all in one go. Think of the Sistine Chapel. The Sistine Chapel, if I were to come out as an artist in Sistine Chapel, people don't recognize the deities. They're just going to think I black-faced it. And that's something that I don't want. I admire the old masters and their brilliant storyboard kind of, I love Michelangelo, the way he told it, human life. He basically had the Sistine Chapel is like, I would say, cut into 3 parts. It's the creation of the world, creation, of Adam, and then the big natural disasters that happened to Adam, children. And that I wanted to take that and explain people from the African diaspora. So through the deities' eyes, and through, of course, female lens, because I'm female. But so I started off with the God story of the deities. They're all creating the earth and creating Eve, and then her journey, significant things that happened through the Atlantic slave trade, and how that has changed a lot of our perception currently. So when I was creating, when I had this general thing in mind, I was like, how am I going to explain to the masses, like slowly unravel and explain who these deities are, and really get everybody familiar. It's going to be a slow burn. So I opened up with my first exhibition, which was all about female empowerment. This is who I am as an artist, and I had variations. It was kind of a lot of different paintings. It had some Greek mythology reimagined in there, and then it had the creation of Eve. So it had that. So that was a summary of what I am as an artist.
This is the BITCH?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then I was like, all right, now let's do the Odishas and the cycle of life and explain the destiny and what Lukumi is about. So that's how the next exhibitions kind of unfolded.
Mhm.
And then once people are understanding where I'm getting at, it was like I was creating small puzzle pieces in each exhibition to finally put them together here. And I didn't think of the massive undercarriage of the ship. So my first thought was, okay, like redo the chapel ceiling, but then if I do that, that's going to go against everything I'm saying. It's going to be the church ceiling, and that's not what Lukumi is about. And I was like, why not? If I'm all about reclaiming and looking at different horrific events in a different kind of light, always looking at the silver lining, why not depict this story on the variation of the catalyst of what brought these stories to us, me here, I grew up in America. So it was slave ship. And this is where the stories were carried. This is how we protected and how we made the deities or survived, kept the survival of the deities. And so that was like, all right, that's how I envision it. And so it's so interesting because when I was putting the things together, the images together, it literally was shaped like a boat. And that's how that's why I let things naturally happen. And at the end, I thought this was a summary of what Lukumi is about. So there's no heaven and hell like the Last Judgment depicts. This particular one is our hell on earth, and then our reclaiming. And that's Adam and Eve, which is always depicted in red. And you have the gods intertwined all throughout. You have Yemaya, they all are doing things that they're supposed to. Yemaya was the mother to all. She is the ocean. She's the one that kept us feeling safe on the travels and the journeys. And then you have right there Obatala explaining to Adam like the story of how I created you, how I created the lands. And so they're all here. And you have Ogun, God of War, who's lighting that Confederate flag. And then you have Elegua, who is, you always have to speak to him first. He is the communicator from, what you have to pray to him before you pray to the deity. Between the worlds. Yeah, so that's why he has the ladder. So again, everything. And then at the very, very top is the creation snake. And she represents all the colors because we all have to work as a community to, I would say, to help rectify all the wrongs. But also she represents with her snake-like body that curls and entwines. It's the journey of life as well and all its turns. And yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's time for
okay.
the Q&A.
Yeah, let's go into Q&A. It's perfect time.
Happy to take any questions.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I just had a question about materiality. So it seems like you've worked a lot with organic materials.
Yes.
When did you choose to go in that direction versus thinking about like how pigments, like the technology have changed and like the different kind of new artificial pigments you could purchase? Can you talk more about that decision and when in your career you made that choice?
The more I understood and learned about Lukumi, so or the Yoruba religion. So we have a thing that we like to say is Ashe. It's our energy. It's when you simplest form, when you cook some soup for your child to make her feel better, you know, you're putting that love into that soup, that love into the cooking. And it's something for me to create these it's like special. So me creating this, I feel like you can go to the best restaurant and eat a really good meal, but you're gonna love your grandma's specific favorite meal. It's gonna taste better than anything you can buy, even though they have the best ingredients at the restaurant. It's this. That's how I feel like my paintings, you can feel it when you see it in person, rather than just image. Maybe an image you can say, oh, I can use paints from the store, but if you see it in person, the luminosity of it and the richness of it is different, because I did use store-bought when I was at the very beginning. And as I started to create my own pigments, it was richer. It was something about it that just came off the canvas or the panel.
That's wonderful.
Go ahead. Yeah, I have a question that was kind of prompted by Sophia's question about clothing. I'm curious about the role of nudity in your art, because at the beginning you talked about like the one painting in your grandma's house and how the nudity like stuck with you. And stuff. I'm just curious, like, does nudity signal anything in particular, the way like the figs or the snake do, or like what is like, how do you decide like, is the figure in my painting going to be nude, is it gonna be like semi-clothed, or
So nudity is natural, and I hate that that if anything is revealed, it's sexualized. Even when I see a lot of when I see men painting women, it's sexualized, no matter if it's like the pose or whatever. And so I want to take the mindset of the body being sexualized as something more natural, just like in the natural pigments I create and use, you know, peroxide, all that. It's the natural state of being. When did we come up with this concept that this is shameful to be nude? And it all stems from, again, I think the colonized minds of you have to be covered. Women have to be covered to be a lady, all this kind of, you know. So I wanted to do that. And however, I didn't want it to be distracting because we still have that mindset, no matter how much we try. So I'm not going to just have somebody, you know, spread wide open or anything like that. That's distracting. I can't see the story. So I'll drape, you know, a cloth here and there, but otherwise, you don't just see nude. You see a full story. It has to be a balance. I think so.
So I'm also Cuban American, and I study the intersection of like art and religion in Cuban, like diasporic and Cuban art. And so like a lot of art that I've like looked at and studied by Cuban artists like references like multiple religions, like it'll be like Christianity, Gumi, like they'll just be like a lot of them, and often like at the same time. And like in your work, like you reference Lukumi, but also like use like a Christian form. So I was just wondering if you could talk about like if there's any like remnants of like Renaissance and Baroque art as Christian, and like if that factors in at all, or if it is like this exclusively an aesthetic like borrowing.
I'm slowly unmasking. So I'm actually working on a current series that's more so it's revealing who they are. I use the religious aspect of it in order for you to know how we synchronized them and how we utilize them. Mary is a mother to all, you know, she's a mother to Jesus. But in Yoruba religion, Yemaya is the mother to all, because we all are seen as the chosen one. There's not one chosen one, you know? So I do replace things strategically, a lot. And I know a lot of the Cuban versions, a lot of the gods are lighter skin, you know, because there's a mix there, and it is a colonized version in there, and they're dressed in a certain way. And so again, I'm stripping that away to show where the origin is.
That's great. I was actually going to ask you about colorism, and because one thing that's very exciting is that you are bringing this perspective from the diaspora located in the Caribbean, which is something we haven't had on the Blackboard platform just yet. But you know, the importance of colorism in the Caribbean, perhaps less in Cuba than in the rest of the Antilles, but still it's so strong. So I was wondering how you positioned yourself in relation to that aesthetics, which is sometimes associated with the Baroque. I feel like you started answering the question. You can say more than.
You mean why that I the way that you pretty much like
Well, I haven't seen light-skinned people in
Right.
paintings.
So it stems from a different things. My grandmother, she born in Cuba, she there's a lot of colorism there. And so she thought light was more beautiful, and she always wished she was lighter. But she was into this, religion that in Cuba they depict them as light skinned. Oshun is the most beautiful, supposed to be the most beautiful deity. And they describe her as being mixed, and she has this long, flowy, curly hair. And it's like, okay, that's not the right, right message here. And so I'm depicting them the way they should, where they originated from, my imagination of of how they would look. So Africa, that's how they're going to look, these deities. And we're going to strip away a lot of the European aesthetics. Okay, like we're going to strip away you have to have the key nose and then the little lips and all of this, just so we can scratch away all that, all the manipulation, the strangling, and let's start from what I see as where they originated. Because my grandmother was beautiful, and I wish she would have known that.
But I want to say also with Oshun, you specifically brought in golden, patches, golden markings, and this is your concept of Oshun. But I think it's also like this kind of opening up what beauty means, right? It's like this kind of welcoming beauty of all forms. So it's me as an artist, I find beauty as like we're all beginning to look alike sometimes with what we perceive as beauty here in America. Looks like a little cookie cutter, how we're supposed to dress, how we're supposed to do everything. And what's beautiful is the differences we have. That's what makes us unique. That's what makes us actually artists. Is adding our own story. Anybody can copy, but it's incorporating what someone can't copy. That's our individuality. And I find when I paint my subjects, I love the different look. I love seeing, because everyone, no matter who, everybody is beautiful in their own way. So that's why I painted Oshun with vitiligo and gold, and I also tried to make her, kind of so you can recognize her in all of the images.
I very appreciate it, and I really like the painting. I have a full question. First, that I noticed that you said you want to redefine what beauty is.
Yeah.
Do you think that you take a more human-oriented or human-centered approach, because you appropriate the old version of composition or styles that you change only the subject or the human in the painting? Is that your way of saying that? And especially also Renaissance Baroque painting, they centralize humans. So I just wonder if you want to highlight a human in the whole art artistic approach. And also the second question is, what do you think? I don't know if you familiar with this. What do you think is the relation between this painting of past to change the past in relation to, for example, Afro-Futurism that involve more imaginative or speculative narrative? And the third question is more tough question, like how do you use gold to as a material, and did you melt them? And I'm just curious, like how
So gold, I do the old technique. So I use clay mold first, and then I gild it. So I use real 24 karat gold or real 18 karat gold, and I variate. And I use real silver, so all that. However, silver, I know I have to seal because it does start to tarnish after a while, and I have learned that. But I do like the age quality of it. The next question, I think the first question you had was humanizing the deities because they are touchable. So in Catholic and Christianity, besides Caravaggio, who made them, he's the one that made them real, like they're touchable. This is like they were real people. The deities they manage us. We utilize them. They are touchable. So I wanted them to, it's not just their look is godly, you know, every one of us helps, we help each other, right? We invoke, these deities are sometimes, they invoke us. So if I give someone maternal love when they need it, I'm in essence at that moment, she encompassed me to give that person the love they needed at that moment to help them through. So again, these deities are touchable. They have very human-like qualities, and they're not all good. And they're just like the Greek gods. They have their because of their human qualities, they are not perfect. They do have their faults a lot. And what was the other question? The middle one? Second question.
Afrofuturism and speculative speculation, speculative rewriting history, or your your artistic approach.
So what's the difference, you saying, of why I use Renaissance and what's the difference between Afro? Not doing a whole.
Yeah, like
If I understand it,
yeah.
I use the Renaissance in particular because we were left out in that narrative. And this is the master narrative that is seen in America. When we go to museums, any foreigner who comes to America goes to museums to see our culture, to really experience that. And if you see all these white paintings that we see of the one or two Black people as being enslaved, or it sets the wrong tone. So I'm again including this and also trying to empower people of color like me and others that we are, first of all, we did exist. We were part of history, and it's empowering to be seen in a light that's other than being enslaved. It's, wow, this is a history. We have a history before enslavement. It's the best way.
If I can just point out, though, this is not the first time that someone brings up the movement of Afrofuturism on the Black Baroque project in response to the work of artists who are engaging with Baroque aesthetics. So it seems that speculation is something that people really pick up on when they see work such as your work, and think that speculation, it can go back in time, it can go forward, but it can do similar cultural work.
And that's what I love about Afrofuturism. I love the images there. I love it just as much as the Renaissance.
Thank you so much for the conversation and the explanations and the stories. I really appreciate all of it. And one thing that stuck with me, I appreciated that you started with thinking about your daughter as a potential audience and this pedagogical effect of children's stories, and also just the different audiences. And I think you said that it was a slow burn about like thinking of the progression of your different works. So from there, I have a question about how you manage the different audiences with that revealing and also keeping secret. If I understand Lukumi, so like not everyone's supposed to know everything. And so how do you walk that line about trying to educate and use to empower lots of different potential viewers, and also educate and open people's minds, while also maybe navigating that other element of the kind of secrecy of a secret power that's powerful because it's secret?
That's why I tell their stories instead of going deep into the practice, because every religious house practices, they do different things. That's when you're specifically initiated into a house, there are secrets within that. So I don't paint more, that's why I stem from more of the past. More of when these deities roam the earth. In order to, again, mainstream them, in order to be, they're approachable. Just like the Greek mythology is approachable. We don't know exactly what, I know that there was a lot of sacrifices as well. This was a religion at one point. And what I find really fascinating, it's kind of detouring, but that because it was kept under wraps, it survived this long. I mean, we could argue how old this religion is, but I believe that we're at the right time where we're accepting this. We're accepting, we're not just shutting it down. We're open to really understanding different cultures and not bashing them. So
If I can just ask another question about how you might think or position yourself in relation to sort of other artistic traditions, whether they be national or Afro-diasporic. I've heard, about sort of an Afro-Latin American perspective, perhaps, and how maybe this conversation between Chicago, Cuba, Western coast of Africa, and the Mediterranean, the Southern European world for you. Does it tradition not matter? Do those traditions not matter? Do you like to kind of pick and choose and kind of to disassemble them or to reassemble them for particular purposes and
or like when I paint,
yeah, when you paint, I'm thinking about who you're thinking, because sometimes we have, I don't know, there are lineages, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
You don't care about those.
Yeah.
Or if you do, and you think of your work as part of a particular project that is more than your own.
So I think that this is where being multicultural is a blessing, because I'm not caged to one idea. It makes me unrestricted. So it makes me able to depict these stories or combine stories if I need to enough where it's a version of the story that everybody can feel and understand. Again, I'm trying to make these deities accessible to be incorporated in our conversation, in the master narrative. And it was since, how can I say this? I was allowed to incorporate or use these deities in my life the way I want to view them, because that's what these deities are for throughout history. They are constantly in transformation to match contemporary society. I mean, look at the Bible's been changed, in order to fit the times. And so do the deities. And I'm taking certain stories that can relate to issues in societies today, even though they're depicted stylistically in the Renaissance and Baroque styles.
Fabulous, thank you so much. Let me see. Here we are. We are at time, but do we have one final burning question in the audience? Okay. Or Sophia, did you want to say something maybe?
I just want to say, Harmonia's paintings just really kind of speak to the power of art, speak to why art is so important and what it's doing to all of us as just the viewer, the audience, the believers or whatnot. So I just thank you, Harmonia, for everything. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. You're amazing at interpreting and really analyzing my paintings. I love it.
Thank you both. This was really a luminous and exhilarating conversation and a great launch for the 2023 season of the Black Baroque Project. Thank you to our speakers. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you for joining us today. Please stay tuned for the next BBP event, which will take place online actually on May 22nd. because the Black Baroque project, and I actually love the image you included that represents a Black subject next to an indigenous subject, both of them being similarly exploited and reframed by white supremacy. I just love that Black and brown connection in your work. So the Black Baroque project similarly stand in solidarity with the cause of critical Romani studies, so that our next event will put in conversation Romani artist Małgorzata Merga, who represented Poland at the Venice Biennale last summer, with Romani scholar and activist Anna Merga, who is the current deputy director of the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture, live from Berlin. So you can find information about that forthcoming event online, as well as the recording of today's conversation on the BBP webpage, created and maintained by Rachel. Stay tuned and thank you.